So in part three of our refueling considerations for a helicopter, I'd like to talk to you guys about some accidents that have occurred in the past. Three of the accidents that we're going to review were caused by fuel starvation, i.e. running out of gas. And an additional accident that we're going to look at was caused by fuel contamination. So the first of the three accidents that we're going to look at involved the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and this occurred back in October of 2010. During the flight that preceded the accident flight, the pilot had told one of the two officers that was on board the aircraft with him that they were not going to be able to fly for as long as normal because he was going to have to get fuel. At the end of that flight, he dropped off the two officers at the police station in Arnold and attempted to make a flight out to Spirit of St. Louis Airport about 20 to 22 nautical miles away to obtain fuel. Fortunately, he did not make it. Post-accident examination of the helicopter revealed there was no usable fuel on board and that the main rotor mass had separated as a result of mass bumping. It's always surprised me that in all three of these accidents that each time the pilot ran out of fuel and the engine flamed out, that they didn't successfully enter an auto, ultimately got a blade stall and high-speed mass bump in each of these accidents. So the next accident we're going to look at also occurred here in Missouri. On August 26, 2011, Eurocopter AS350 helicopter crashed following a loss of engine power as a result of fuel exhaustion near the town of Mosby, Missouri. The pilot, flight nurse, flight paramedic, and patient were all killed, and the helicopter was substantially damaged by impact forces. And essentially what happened with this crash was the pilot had departed from their base and flew to Bethany, Missouri. On the flight there, he discovered that he had much less fuel on board than he realized. After he arrived at Bethany, they actually loaded the patient on board the aircraft and he departed. His ultimate destination was going to be Liberty, Missouri, and his plan was to actually obtain fuel at KGPH, which is located in Mosby, Missouri. Unfortunately, he crashed only about 1 mile or so from the airport. So the National Transportation Safety Board determined the probable cause of this accident to be the pilot's failure to confirm that the helicopter had adequate fuel on board to complete the mission before making the first departure, his improper decision to continue the mission and make a second departure after he became aware of a critically low fuel level, and his failure to successfully enter an auto rotation when the engine lost power due to fuel exhaustion. So the next accident that we're going to look at involved Francis Gary Powers, and yes, it's the same Francis Gary Powers that was shot down over Russia while flying a U-2 spy plane for the CIA. The accident occurred on the morning of August 1st, 1977, and Powers was flying the KNBC Channel 4 helicopter. Actually had a cameraman on board with him named George Spears, and they had departed Burbank and flown out to Santa Barbara, and were doing some aerial video footage of some fire activity out around Santa Barbara. He was actually back inbound to Burbank and discovered that he had not enough fuel to make it, and he had actually radioed Van Nuys Airport and requested to land there to obtain fuel. However, he never made it back to Van Nuys. Powers attempted an auto rotation into the Sepulveda Dam recreational area just east of Encino. However, this was unsuccessful. In fact, several witnesses saw Powers ejected from the helicopter at about 50 feet of altitude, indicating that he was not wearing his seatbelt, which is even more perplexing. So the final accident we're going to look at occurred February 22nd, 1999, near Cambridge, Massachusetts. Massachusetts State Police helicopter departed a heliport with 2 crew members and 2 passengers and climbed out to about 600 feet over a river. Witnesses reported seeing a puff of smoke from the engine exhaust. The helicopter was observed to turn towards the river and descend at an angle between 45 and 70 degrees. Witnesses stated that the main rotor blades were either turning slowly or had stopped prior to the helicopter colliding with a boathouse roof. No pre-impact failure of the main rotor or transmission was found. An examination of the engine revealed that 5 of the 6 fuel injection ports were clogged. Samples from the helicopter fuel system contained iron oxide, which is good old rust, and water. The Massachusetts State Police had a 6,000-gallon in-ground fuel storage tank that had not been maintained or secured in 14 years, except for a filter change between 1984 and 1986. Fuel samples from the storage tank contained high levels of rust and water, as well as degraded thermal properties. Further investigation revealed that there was a lack of oversight in the air operations and no training, safety, or fuel management program. Records showed that in the past 5 years, the Massachusetts State Police had provided the pilot with only one training session that consisted of a 2-day ground school and one formal training flight. So the NTSB determined the probable cause of the accident to be, number one, the State Police's management failure to provide adequate oversight of its air wing. Number two, fuel contamination and obstructed fuel injector nozzles due to inaccurate fuel storage, resulting in loss of engine power. And three, the failure of the pilot to execute a proper auto rotation, which resulted in a loss of rotor RPM and subsequent loss to helicopter control. So on the issue of fuel contamination, then you guys know, sump the fuel. First flight of the day, sump the fuel. And every time you add fuel to the aircraft, you should sump the fuel again, particularly if you buy fuel at an off airport, at a site that you're not used to. We have our own fuel source here, and we sump the fuel and maintain the filters. Actually, we double filter the fuel. On the issue of fuel exhaustion, that is absolutely, completely, at least in theory, a preventable cause of accidents. So, again, guys, we got to get better on not running out of fuel here. The FAA is actually promoting a new program, and it has been since about 2012 or 2013, called Land and Live. And basically what they're promoting is, if you're running out of options, you're running out of fuel, weather's closing in on you, that you actually land the aircraft. So land and live. And sort of in that vein, about 3 years ago, I ended up finding myself in sort of the same situation. I left out of Carlsbad, New Mexico, flying a gyro to El Paso, Texas. Weather had forecast winds of 40 miles an hour or so. As it turned out, the winds were actually gusting to nearly 60. I got about 4/5 of the way to El Paso and saw that I was not going to make the rest of the trip without running out of fuel in a very inhospitable area. So I chose to land actually at a border patrol station east of El Paso, which made for some pretty exciting moments after I landed, but they ended up giving me some fuel and I was able to continue on, and life was good.